I want to revisit the tale of Senuhe or Senuhe. And the reason why is because I didn't fully cover it last time. So I want people to first understand a couple things. The tale of Senuhe is about a man who is overcome with a sudden urge to run away from Egypt. He has no justification for this, for he has committed no crime and he has done no evil. Now, this was set in a time when Egypt had colonized as far as Syria and it had colonized the Libyans. And so those people were under the control of the Egyptians. A second thing to consider is that the person involved in this story, Senuha, says, I am a follower who follows his lord, a servant of the family quarters of the king's wife of Senreset in Kenemsut, king's daughter of Anamut in Neferu, lady in reverence. In other words, he works for the high court. He works for the high people in the lands. So now the question is, why would he leave? Well, what happened was the pharaoh died, and something in his heart trembled, and he just ran. For some reason, he just thought he was in trouble, and he ran. And he knew that the person who was going to be set in command was going to be the son of this pharaoh. So he just ran. And then he goes to the lands of Temehu. He doesn't know where he's going. He just runs through the desert. He just keeps walking through the desert. And he doesn't know where he's going. And then he hears by rumor that a army from Libya, and remember Libya was under the control of the Egyptians, is coming along the horizon, like they're coming over, and he thinks, oh my god, they're after me, and he runs again. But this time he goes in the direction of Syria, and he is spotted by Syrians in Syria, and they're like, oh, you're an Egyptian. So they spot him and they go, he's an Egyptian. And they go, as an Egyptian, you can come and be safe with us. When he gets to those Egyptians, he meets the leader of those Syrians. He meets the leader, and the leader says to him, why have you come here? Why are you in this region? And he says, I have no idea why I'm here. I don't know why I'm actually in this land. I just ran away. And he says to him, it is as if a god sent me here, as if I was driven by destiny or some kind of choice of a god to send me here. And then the guy says, what kind of powerful god is that? If he drove you here, then that means he's here. And then who's guarding Egypt while he's away, since he's so powerful that he can put fear in you so much? And he says, don't worry. The king's son is about to take over. And then he praises that son that he ran away from. And he says, he's good, he's righteous. He can make seas move. He can make women fall pregnant. He can bring abundance, makes grapes grow. He can make sand healthy. He can make, like, he starts praising him. And then this guy says, well, why are you here then if if you're already, if this guy is so good, that means that Egypt is a really dope place. So why are you here? And it says, never mind, you're here anyway. I'm going to be good to you. Now, this story is interpreted in a very strange way. This isn't the end of the story, by the way, but this part of the story, the rest of the story is that he becomes a leader, and then he has to fight another guy who thing, and then he defeats him and he becomes a leader above that dude, and then he goes back to Egypt after the son of the dead king calls him back. But that's not the point. The point is when we get to the point where he doesn't know why he left. He feels like destiny sent him to that region, even though he got there quite accidentally, not knowing where he's going. The way it's interpreted is when he says, I don't know why I am here, it's as if the work of a god, as if a man in the Delta finds himself in Abu, which is the lowest part of Egypt today. Like if you look at the map, it's that area close to Sudan. And he says it's as if a man from the tip of the top of Egypt finds himself in the bottom of Egypt. And people interpret this as if he's saying that the bottom of Egypt is foreign to the top of Egypt. But this is a crazy interpretation. And then he also says it's as if a man of the marshes finds himself in the land of the bow, which the land of the Martians, people from the land of the Martians are Nubians. Some of them are half mixed with Egyptians, but they're Nubians, and their Nubian heritage is comes from the land of the bow. So the similarity being made here is not what they think. They think it's to point out foreignness. I know that it's to point out that because Abu is the center of their gods, it's to point out like if a man from the top of Egypt is sent to Abu, or a guy from lower Egypt is sent to upper Egypt, it's because he is being called by a god, much like he was being pushed by a god into those regions. This is an easy interpretation, but we'll look deep into it. Okay, get ready. Listen, this is from Herodotus. Beyond Elephantine, as one travels inland, the land rises. Here one must pass with the boat roped on both sides as men harness an ox, and if the rope breaks, the boat will be carried away by the strength of the current. This part of the river is a 4 days' journey by boat, and the Nile here is twisty, just as the meander a distance of 12 shoni must be passed in the forager's manner. After that, you come to a level plain where there is an island in the Nile called Tecumseh. The country above Elephantine now begins to be inhabited by Ethiopians. Half the people of this island are Ethiopians and half Egyptians. Near the island is a great lake on whose shores live nomadic Ethiopians. After crossing this, you come to the stream of the Nile, which empties into the lake. Now, I want you to ask yourself a question. If the people of Elephantine are black, and these people from this island are half black, half Ethiopian, and half Egyptian, then who's living in the lowest parts? When he says this place of Tecumseh is the place that's the country above Elephantine now begins to be inhabited by Ethiopians. Half the people of the island are Ethiopians and half Egyptians. Another quote from Herodotus. Victims were desirous not to be restricted from the use of cow's flesh, and therefore sent to Amun, saying that they had no relation to the Egyptians because they lived out of the delta and did not speak the same language with them, and desired to be allowed to eat all manner of food. The god, however, did not permit them to do so, saying that the country which the Nile irrigated was Egypt, and that all those were Egyptians who dwell below the city of Elephantine and the Nile, when full inundates not only Delta but also part of the country said to belong to Libya and Arabia. So you see here in the tale of Amun, he describes that the people who lived just outside of the delta. So in other words, the people who lived in the Arabian side of the delta, which the delta, by the way, is this part, the top part of Egypt. So the people who live just outside of that, they asked if they can eat from cow's flesh, and Amun says the only people who can eat of cow's flesh are the people who live along the Nile, right? That means inside the delta, not outside of the delta, and down all the way to the people who live below Elephantine. In other words, he's saying that these people are all Egyptians, and he says these people are all Egyptians who dwell below the city of Elephantine and drink of that river. Such was the answer given them, and the Nile when full, inundates not only the delta but also part of the country said to belong to Libya and Arabia. So you can see here that the answer is simple. But let's go back to the tale of Senuhe. Now that you guys know what it is, the delta is the top part, the elephantine is the lower part. By the way, this word delta and elephantine are newer words. These words they used were not delta and elephantine. It's something closer to Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. These are the words that they use. They didn't use delta or Abu as they said in the other one. Now you must understand that Upper Egypt, Elephantine, Abu, those areas is the religious center of Egypt, whereas Lower Egypt, the part at the top of Egypt, is the administrative and workmanship part of Egypt. Both of them do work and both of them are religious, but the religious center of Egypt is Upper Egypt. Now let's read the tale of Senha. Then I said to him, the Dual King Sehetebra has gone to the horizon. How it happened is not known, but I was told indirectly I was coming with the Temahu land army. When it was reported to me, my heart failed and brought me on the road of flight. Though I had not been implicated or no accusation had been made against me, though so slander had been heard and my name had not been mentioned by the reporter, I do not know what brought me to this hill land. It is as if a slight of a god, as a Delta man seeing himself in Abu, or a marshman in the land of the bow. Now, I want you to think about what this means, the last part. As a Delta man seeing himself in Abu, or a marshman in the land of the bow. Now, what do we know about the Delta? The delta is the top part of Egypt, that part that I showed you, but it's really Upper Egypt they mean, not just the delta region, but let's say the delta region, as take it as it's written. And he sees himself in Abu. Abu is the religious area of ancient Egypt. So he means that it's as if a man was called by God to that region, seeing himself in Abu, or a marshman. Remember, a marshman is that area that has half Ethiopians, half Egyptians. A marshman in the land of the bow. What's the land of the bow? It's where the Ethiopians are. It's Meroe. It's the heartland of the Ethiopians, the city state of the Ethiopians. So what is being alleged here is not they're so foreign. And by the way, okay, let's carry on. It's not that they're so foreign that you, oh my God, thingy. What it's saying is, it's as if I was brought to the Godlands, or it's as if I was sent there by God. A modern interpretation of this would be saying it's as if an African American finds himself in Africa, or it's as if a a American Jew finds himself in Israel. What's to be read here is that there's a divine push. And of course, the sentence after this that I showed you was that he said, if there's such a God that's this powerful, then doesn't it suck the fact that he left Egypt and then here he starts praising the Egyptian god, Pharaoh, and says that he will take care of the land even if this God is not there. This proves that he's talking about a God thing, not a racial thing. Not to mention that he says that the people of Elephantine and below Elephantine are Egyptians, and that these Ethiopians that he's mentioning from the marshlands or from Tecumseh, which is what he writes in his book, the people from Tecumseh that are Ethiopians that occupy that island, half occupied by Ethiopians, half occupied by Egyptians, that these people are above Elephantine, not below Elephantine, above it. Meaning that Ethiopians aren't just the bottom part of Egypt, they can be right in the middle. And the reason he's separating Ethiopians from Egyptians, he's separating nations. In multiple parts, he mentions that Egyptians and Ethiopians are the same, but then he mentions the differences because they are of the different regions.